When you walk with open arms towards the sun, you feel the warmth of the rays, and then you know you're alive, and you don't have to be afraid of anything, cause you know the truth, and the truth is love, yes it is. Wasn't what they said to you, or anything that you learn from a book or from the news. It's not like that, cause it's a thing. It is something that you do. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Dib-on baby did-a-long. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Doop doo doop-a-doo. Dib-on baby did-a-long.
Welcome to the Bassline. Michael Kane is a frontline activist based in New York. He is the founder of Teachers for Choice. He is outspoken, he is visible, and he is consistent. It is with great delight that I welcome back to the Bassline the tireless Michael Kane. How are you this morning, Michael?
So much for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Very excited to talk with you. So a few announcements here before we jump into this lively discussion. September 28th is going to be the next 528 Frequency Jam at Rock Mill Fitness. Please join us. We want to keep this series going, and PRN audience members have been a key to getting this off the ground. But we want to see you again. If you haven't made it out, we want to see you for the first time. And it's going to be an awesome jam session. We took the month of August off. I was in France, and Kevin Nathaniel was in Japan. But we're back. We're resuming the series. Rock Mill is a great venue you should know about. The 528 frequency is real. Take it like a doctor's appointment, as a matter of fact. If you don't feel yourself, if you don't feel perfectly well, come through and let the 528 frequency wash over you. So that's Sunday, September 28th, 3:30 p.m. our doors, and the address is 274 Lenox Avenue, 274 Lenox Avenue. Also, I always forget to mention this, but please look me up on social media. I lost a lot of my reach, it seems, on Facebook when I started speaking out against the killer vaccines. It just seemed like my reach was just crushed. So please jump in there and, do some Facebook fighting with me. Fight the pro-vaxxers and the medical tyrants on my page. Check out my Instagram page if you would, building that up. But first and foremost, of course, subscribe to my Substack if you haven't already. Jeremiah Hosea on Substack. And I have a ton of articles. They're almost all medical freedom focused. And it's been a pleasure. I'm a professional journalist now, dare I say, because of your support. And I need that continued support to keep the wagon wheel rolling. So please go to my Substack, become a subscriber. If you can't afford to be a paid subscriber, please become a free subscriber right away. Please check out the articles, like them, share them. And, of course, you can support this program by buying a chess lesson. I'm also the founder of RemoteLearningChess.com, or you could buy the theme song of this show, Love's the Highest Truth, or any number of other original songs at JeremiahHosea.com, JeremiahHosea.com. So many different ways of supporting this program, and I appreciate it greatly. So that being said, we have a lot to talk about with our distinguished guest, Michael Kane. Now, we try to be action-oriented here. You know, we love to talk, we love theorizing, we love philosophy, but it all has to be done with proactive action in mind. So rather than wasting any time, I would love to get right into you, Michael, telling us about what is happening on September 27th. People are mobilizing in New York. They're mobilizing in different parts of the country. What's going on September 27th?
So a lot of people might know that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's the current Secretary of Health and Human Services, is under attack. Big Pharma is attacking him. Their lackeys are attacking him. The mainstream media is attacking him. And that's why over at Children's Health Defense, we've come out and said, thank you, RFK. I actually recently took a position as the director of advocacy at Children's Health Defense, working very closely with Mary Holland. And she came out with this Thank You RFK campaign and hashtag. And now we're bringing it to the streets peacefully all across the nation. In New York City, we are going to go to Pfizer's headquarters, which we've been there often before, but now they have a new one over in Hudson Yards. So this will be our first time having a peaceful rally at their new location. And we're just showing our support for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the fact that he's fighting for the health of our kids, the health of our entire nation, for everybody against all odds, getting into this position and doing everything that he can for us. And it's something that's happening across the nation on September 27th. It's happening in California, Connecticut, Florida has multiple locations, Colorado, Michigan, Nebraska, North Dakota, Chicago, and many others that I'm forgetting right now. So everybody can go to teachersforchoice.org. That's teachers, F-O-R, choice.org. And we have the rally flyer that's up top there, and we'll connect people to get all the information that's at the Teachers for Choice Substack. Bobby Kennedy for 2 decades has stood up for the truth around medical freedom, the truth around vaccines. And this is one of those times he needs us to stand up for him. And I'm honored to be able to do so. And I hope people will come and join us on September 27th in New York City and across the country.
That's outstanding. So teachersforchoice.org is where you can get all the details, but also just say it one more time in terms of when and where.
It will be September 27th at 12 noon in New York City. We're going to be at Pfizer's headquarters. I believe that's 66 Hudson Boulevard East. And again, the exact address is at teachersforchoice.org. And the addresses across the country are rolling in slowly. We have activists all across the nation putting together their rallies and actions now. And the big thing is come out with a sign that says, thank you, RFK. That's the big thing. We need to show this nation that the changes he wants to make and the medical freedom agenda that he has is supported by the people, because the media wants to twist it and make it seem like people don't want choice on what goes into their bodies. People don't want to closely examine, hey, should we be giving 4 shots in one to my 3-year-old child? Should we give a Hep B shot on day 0, on the first day of birth? These are very, in my opinion, not even controversial questions. These are just logical things to talk about. And it is shocking, Jeremiah. We have not really had this conversation, except for in the corners of shows like yours, Gary Null, Children's Health Defense, when we were relegated to the shadows, right, to the corners of alternate media. And that's changing right now. And Bobby Kennedy is playing a big role in that. Say what you will for President Trump. I don't agree with the man on everything, and I understand that. But man, he did the nation a real favor by putting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the position that he's in. So we want everybody to stand up and show that. Something interesting, Politico just covered these rallies and covered them as a straight news piece. That is, I'm almost pinching myself like, whoa, what's happening here? We're seeing a little shift in the mainstream media. Some outlets are starting to say, okay, maybe this is a thing. Maybe we need to cover these medical freedom folks. Maybe our readers want to read about it. So I think we're in a real interesting time. And, yeah, I just encourage everybody, show your support for Bobby Kennedy if you love medical freedom, September 27th.
Absolutely. So, yeah, folks, I really, really want you guys to be there. I'm going to say right now, unfortunately, I can't be there because I have a gig that day, so I won't be in town, which is a real bummer for me because I would love to be at a New York City rally. Love to meet up with Michael Kane face-to-face again. And I strongly encourage you to be there just to connect, say hello to Michael, tell him you heard him on the Bassline, and meet other medical freedom people. That's always a great benefit. Maybe the primary benefit of these rallies is just folks connecting in the real world, in real time,
Yeah.
And then you can follow up from there. You can make affinity groups. You can let people know about your projects. There's so many great things that can unfold from people meeting in person. But also, the rally remains an important feature of the whole thing. You know, a lot of people have gotten into this sort of too cool for school kind of attitude about rallying. Oh, what's that going to do? We've rallied. It doesn't make a difference. It's not something that you can do thinking that that's the only thing to be done. Of course not. But it's an important component of waking up the community, of just being visual, being visible, and letting people see, hey, wait a second. Other people are concerned about this. Maybe I don't have to keep my concerns secret anymore. Or these are exactly the people I was hoping to meet. I'm going to go and join them would be a great option that some people might have come to mind. But, the rally is always a component of waking up the people and moving the people. So please don't be a naysayer. Please help engender that spirit on that day, because
Jeremiah,
yes, please.
I really want to feed off of that. You're so right. The idea of the rally, the idea of the freedom rally. This goes back decades and centuries. But the freedom rallies that came up when COVID locked us down, when it took us out of our places of work, out of our places of worship, made us fear each other. There were brave people who stood up and went on the streets and said no. There were brave people who ripped off their masks and said, I'm not covering my face. And then those of us who said, I'm not getting this injection. And when I was fired as a teacher for not getting the COVID shot, the only person who's ever run for president that came out and stood with me was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on the streets of Manhattan, holding a microphone and saying no. This was wrong. And he traveled the country and the world saying it back then. But those rallies and those actions that then led to defeat the mandates in Washington, D.C., 40,000 people at the Capitol. Then the trucker phenomena that led to 1 million people in Ottawa. Now today in 2025 and 2026, Bobby Kennedy is head of the health agencies in America. So that directly came from the rally. That directly came from the Freedom Rally. So that's an extreme example, right? I'm giving you a very big example of how what an amazing historical impact we had. Not to mention exactly what you just said. We need to connect. We live in a world dying to stop us from connecting, meeting in person, looking someone in the eye, shaking their hands, exchanging phone numbers and contact and flyers. Those things are a basis of humanity. These are things we need to continue to do. So whether it's on the micro level of impacting health policy in America or on the micro level of just one-to-one human connection, the rally is just so incredibly critical. And you've been at many of them. I have too. We felt that energy. We encourage people to come out and feel it with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I met Michael Kane at a rally on 125th Street. I also met two Bassline guests, and as well as future Bassline guests at that 125th Street rally. And I have to say, it was a milestone for me personally. It was so invigorating. The great words being spoken out in public in my community, in a black community that needs to hear those words as much or more than any other. And to meet such fine individuals, it made me feel very inspired that there are some really good, solid folks in this movement. And it just proved right there on the spot, we can take this to the streets, finally. This secret conversation, this suppressed conversation, we're bursting out of the seams. We're not going to be suppressed anymore. We're taking it to the people. So please save that date. Try to make a solid effort to be there. And then, of course, I have my event, my musical event, the following day. So you have a beautiful weekend planned of music and medical freedom. And, of course, the September 28th jam session at Rock Mill, I would love for you to make it through. Actually, if you could even, by some chance, make it, Michael, I'd love for you to give us a recap, because it's not officially a medical freedom event. It's a jam session. It's a music thing. But it has become a de facto medical freedom hangout. And a lot of great medical freedom heads, including guests on this show, have attended the jam. So you have a beautiful weekend planned.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic and good to hear. And I know one of the musicians who's jammed out with you there, Kevin Nathaniel. He is going to be making the rally the day before, although I think his time's limited. He's like, Mike, I'll make sure I'll be there for a little bit. So we're definitely going to get some of the drum there on the 27th. And, yeah, I'll make sure to promote your event on the 28th. I love what I'm hearing about it.
Yeah. I would love to see you there. And like I said, we'll open the mic to you just to give a good, solid statement about Teachers for Choice, the rally that happened the previous day and everything, because we've got to keep the ball rolling on all fronts. Now, let's get into your assessment of RFK up until now. Now, let's be objective here. There have been some concerning things. One thing that jumped out at me and other concerned citizens is when RFK was going through his confirmation hearing, it was a little distressing to hear him refer to Operation Warp Speed as this marvelous success. Perhaps he was playing politics. He didn't want to be too radical in his confirmation hearing. Okay, I understand that, but that was one sort of concern that jumps out. There's also, for example, that horrible announcement on day 2 of the Trump administration that they were going, who was it, Larry Ellison, who came out and said, we're making this huge, massive investment in mRNA cancer vaccines. And we're saying, wait a second, we want mRNA removed as a platform. We don't want a huge capital investment in that platform that we want removed. And there's just a number of things that seem to be an improvement. There seems to be some good things on the table, some things that have been mentioned that previously were not being mentioned. But at the same time, we as medical freedom activists certainly get concerned. And anytime we hear anything that comes across as backpedaling or lukewarm, flat-footed language about this stuff that we take so seriously. So looking at the good and the bad, what's your assessment of, I would say, RFK particularly, but just the medical freedom landscape and where we stand now as opposed to, say, a year ago?
Taking a look at everything, I think it's really important to remember Bobby Kennedy is now playing an inside game directly in the belly of the beast. And the changes that he's made, while certainly the majority of them are incremental, even those are rattling the rafters of the D.C. establishment. And a couple of months ago, a secret report leaked from Bio. Bio is one of the biggest big pharma lobbying firms in America. And it laid out their plan. They have millions of dollars invested in trying to take out Robert F. Kennedy Jr., getting him fired, forcing him to resign, and they named the month of September as the month that they needed to do that. And what have we seen? We've seen a huge push in September to get rid of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And one of those flashpoints was over the now fired CDC director, Susan Menarez. Now, originally, Bobby Kennedy had a much different pick. He had former Congressman Dave Weldon as his head of CDC. Dave Weldon's a medical freedom hero for over 2 decades. He introduced legislation to get rid of thimerosal from vaccines 15, 16 years ago in the federal government. This is a guy, he's a doctor. He knows how DC works and CDC works. They couldn't even get him a hearing. 20 minutes before his hearing was scheduled to go, President Trump pulled the hearing, and they didn't even allow Weldon onto the floor. That's because the Republicans split and wouldn't give the votes. And when that happened, they were staring at an acting director of CDC named Susan Menarez, who had a horrendous bio. She was with ARPA-H, which is the health equivalent of DARPA. So basically, that's a CIA cutout working on various technologies of health. And she had a big AI background, and she was really part of the medical deep state. Menarez ended up being the compromise candidate. They compromised. Bobby Kennedy didn't get what he wanted. The Democrats didn't get what they wanted. But these kind of rhino Republicans, I might call them, were able to settle on Menarez. Not even 1 month later, Bobby Kennedy found this woman would not do anything that him and Trump wanted to get forward. What did they want to do? Talk honestly about the science around vaccines, bring up problems, and possibly change the childhood schedule if it was necessary. Bobby wanted to fire the people who demanded masks and vaccine mandates, and that 6-month-olds get COVID shots. Menares wouldn't do any of this. So Bobby fired her, and Donald Trump fired her. And that created this huge flashpoint and this huge point of where the lines are really drawn, and they're trying to get rid of Bobby Kennedy. So I think it's important to understand, even the incremental changes Bobby Kennedy has implemented so far has completely ignited the deep state to come after him and to take him out. So, no, what Bobby Kennedy's saying is not perfect. He's backing certain vaccines that I would never do, that Children's Health Defense wouldn't do, that Teachers for Choice wouldn't do. So I don't stand with Bobby Kennedy in every single thing that he's done. But there is no question that we've seen more movement and more achievement and more progress on health issues in this country in these past 7-8 months or so than we have ever seen in the history of the nation. Also, I am hearing the end of September, we are going to get some shocking announcements from HHS, especially regarding autism. One of the things I'm hearing is we might hear a lot less about autism and a lot more about brain damage.
Wow.
Because autism has become this term they'll throw even on just a quirky, nerdy kid now that just maybe beats to the drum of his own drummer. That's not what autism really is. It just simply isn't. So I think we're about to see some real revolutionary things that are going to drop. There's some things I actually do know for sure that are going to come I'm excited about, and I can't say right now. But the end of this month, right after our rally, right after your performance on the 28th there, I think right around that time we're going to be hearing some really shocking announcements from HHS. So just to kind of wrap up on this, I understand where you're coming from, Jeremiah, and other people are coming from. You know, one of my friends who I admire, Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, has been very critical of Bobby Kennedy and others. Recently, she's tweeting, "I stand with Bobby Kennedy. Thank you, Bobby Kennedy," because she sees what just happened. She sees that they're going for the jugular on him. And in this chess match, Bobby is playing the best chess game that he can play. So, and the very last thing I'll say on this.
Take your time.
It's not time for us to fall asleep. It's not time for the medical freedom movement to say, oh, Bobby's got this. We're all good. We don't have to worry. No, there's still an outside game we need to play, and there's still pressure we need to put around these issues as well, too, because there are certain things Bobby's not going to fix, certain things he's on the wrong side of, unfortunately. And as a movement, we do need to speak up, and we do need to fight in those areas, too.
Absolutely. So speaking of fighting, it's great to support strong organizations. If you are not a part of an organization, find an organization that you can support. If there's no local chapter or no medical freedom organization in whatever little county or town you happen to live in, seriously consider starting one. It just takes a few people to start an organization, but you can also, again, of course, support existing organizations such as Teachers for Choice. So I would love to hear from you, Michael. What's the latest with Teachers for Choice? Is the organization growing in any way? Is there any momentum at this moment? Tell us the Teachers for Choice update.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Teachers for Choice was an organization I formed back in 2020 when they were forcing COVID testing on teachers and students in New York City. We actually ended up suing over that, and the organization was born from that. And, of course, we knew what was coming. We knew vaccine mandates were coming in short order, and that's when Teachers for Choice really had our kind of, biggest surge was 2021. In August, the mandates get thousands of people at City Hall rallying and such. And we also have some ongoing lawsuits that are happening right now. Like, for example, there was a lawsuit, Kane versus de Blasio, which is myself and about a dozen other teachers and educators, who sued then Mayor de Blasio for the illegal vaccine mandate. That case is still weaving its way through the courts. It's trying to get into the Supreme Court right now, and we should know within a couple of months if the Supreme Court will pick up that case over people fired being forced to take vaccines. One of the things Teachers for Choice is very much involved in is local and national politics. We've become very political. We put our name to supporting two separate bills that are sponsored in Washington, D.C. One of those bills is called End the Vaccine Carve-Out. That bill is sponsored by Representative Gosar from Arizona. And what that would do is that bill would end the liability shield that makes it illegal to sue vaccine manufacturers if you or a child are injured from a vaccine that they take. So Representative Gosar put that bill out, End the Vaccine Carve-Out, and people can find out about that at endthevaccinecarveout.com. We have a whole coalition of groups that support that, and on Gosar's press release, Teachers for Choice was listed as an official supporter of that. And also another act called the Grace Act, Teachers for Choice was listed as an official sponsor, and the Grace Act would be able to bring back the religious exemption to vaccination in all 50 states. Some people might know that there are 5 states right now that struggle with this. New York and California, the top of the list, do not have any non-medical exemption of vaccination. This bill would push and force for a religious exemption to be back. It actually wouldn't require a religious exemption, but it would cut federal funding for any state that was trampling on religious liberty. And that bill is sponsored by Representative Greg Steube out of Florida. And what's really cool about that, Jeremiah, is that we have lawmakers at the federal level that are actually seeking support from Teachers for Choice. They actually want our name and our brand with them as they go out there and try to promote their legislation. So that's kind of a new thing for us that, we're out there in the streets. We got the megaphones, like we're making noise. We got our T-shirts printed and stuff like that. But now we're actually, having meetings with elected officials, not only those who we're, telling are doing a bad job, but those who we're shaking hands with, and we're supporting their legislation because they're putting forward pro-medical freedom legislation on the federal level. And that is kind of brand new as well, too. We really have never seen anything quite like this. I can tell you there are offices of representatives and attorneys on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. that are now wide open to groups like Teachers for Choice as well as Children's Health Defense. So the political landscape has changed quite a bit in a way that medical freedom's voice is being heard in a way that I haven't seen in my lifetime.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I've seen some very interesting and new things that have pleasantly surprised me, I have to admit, but, always a bit cautious, a bit suspicious, a bit cynical. Don't want to count our chickens before they hatch or anything like that.
For sure.
I'd like to segue into something that's sort of generated a lot of attention, you might say, in the past week, which is the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
It's a touchy issue, so I want to describe it a little bit cautiously. I'll say, first of all, I'm not very familiar with Charlie Kirk. I've seen some short videos, Instagram videos, YouTube shorts. There's some things that he says that I might even agree with him a little bit. I mostly think I don't agree with him about most of his shtick and how he phrases things. Find him to be just very antagonistic, a little bit ignorant, to say the least, in terms of just certain racial themes in U.S. history. I heard him criticize Martin Luther King Jr., which I very much dislike. I don't know what his whole rap is about Martin Luther King Jr. I guess I should go back and listen to it. But, he claims to be a Christian, and I think, why are you going out of your way insulting a reverend, a man of the good book like you, who helped integrate this country, helped overcome extraordinary injustice in this country? Why would that be someone you would target for criticism? And any number of other sort of things. Again, have not listened to him enough to give a full assessment of his beliefs and philosophies. But I do think, first of all, in general, we should not be celebrating murder under any
Right.
circumstances. And I saw a lot of that, people just going immediately to the jokes or he got what he asked for kind of stuff. And, you know, maybe the chickens came home to roost, so to speak. I don't think that's a great analogy to use, the Malcolm X chicken come home to roost, because he was referring to the JFK assassination, and JFK authorized assassinations of heads of state. He authorized wars, a little bit different than a guy who's kind of on the level of a shock jock to some extent. But it's fascinating to see, you know, the social swing of the pendulum, where a lot of the people who were champions of cancel culture and censorship during COVID, a lot of those same folks are now being canceled and getting a little dose of their own medicine. But what really concerns me in the bigger picture, and I must admit, I kind of enjoy seeing some of those poison pushers like Jimmy Kimmel get canceled. I kind of enjoy that, because I remember when Jimmy Kimmel was on his program saying if you didn't receive this experimental medical intervention, you didn't deserve medical treatment if you go into a hospital. Yep. And that was his big joke. Actually, we on Stop the Shots last night, we listened to a 2015 clip where Jimmy Kimmel went way out of his way, dedicating 5 minutes of his show to attack and insult so-called anti-vaxxers. But what I am concerned about in the bigger picture is, with people losing their jobs for, you know, making jokes or not responding the way they're supposed to, quote unquote, to this event, have we not entered already the social credit system? Are people not already sort of, they're paving the way for their own social credit infrastructure, that by the time that's here and fully actualized, we will have already carried out the sort of modalities of that system. So it could almost be a seamless transition if we keep going the way that we're going. What are some of your thoughts about?
Yeah, I appreciate everything you have to say there, because this is a complex issue. First and foremost, you know, my heart goes out to Charlie and his family, to his wife, Erica. That's a terrible thing to have to witness. Hundreds of millions, billions of people saw, you know, that horrific shot, and just the just cold-hearted brutality of assassination of American politics, what it can deteriorate to, you know, when there is an open dialogue. And that's the part about Charlie that I liked. Charlie started some 9 years ago or something, with a folding table, a chair, and he went into college campuses and sat down, and maybe 8 people stood around and said, "Who the hell are you and why are you here?" And all he wanted was a mic, and he gladly gave his mic to anybody. So I so greatly appreciate that. I think that is his legacy. I think his legacy is one of peaceful dialogue. I do firmly disagree with many things that he said. I think at times he said that the Civil Rights Act was an abomination that never should have been made. I've heard him then change that statement to say that, well, it certainly was necessary upon race and for what black people were going through, but it's been made so broad, they're using it now to defend that boys should be able to use girls' bathrooms. So, and there's that's an interesting argument that I would like to explore and get into. But I think the important thing is argument and exploring and getting into these things. So I appreciated that from Charlie Kirk. He was a staunch proponent of free speech and letting people come out into the public square and debate and talk. And he said, because when people stop talking, that's when violence happens. When a husband and wife stop talking, that's when they get divorced. And that's when nations split apart. And so there's a lot that Charlie stood for that I stand for and that I appreciate. You know, at Children's Health Defense, where I work currently, we were in talks with him to come speak at our conference. We have a conference in Austin that'll be happening November 7th through the 9th. We have some amazing speakers coming to that event. Charlie Kirk recently came out in full-throated support of religious exemptions to vaccination in all 50 states. He brought the message of Bobby Kennedy and Children's Health Defense and Teachers for Choice to millions of conservatives who hadn't heard it beforehand. So these are all things that I greatly appreciate. It's actually kind of weird, a little spooky for me to know me and my colleagues were talking to his people about him coming to speak about religious exemptions, and then he was assassinated in the middle of it. So it's also a little sobering for me to just remember how dangerous speech is, right? You know, I do agree that at times, I agreed with a lot that Charlie said, but at times I thought it was inflammatory. At times I did think he was poking the bear, maybe on purpose, maybe to get a rise out of people or to get likes and clicks and views, you know? And it just kind of reminds me, as much as I will fight for anyone's right to say whatever they want to say, because that is essentially free speech, I got to remember that speech is dangerous. My own speech is dangerous. I got a family that I love and that I thank God for every day and I want to come home to. So I think we all, especially people like you and me, Jeremiah, that are in this space, I think we all need to remember how powerful our words are. People listen. People judge, people internalize, and people can take their own problems out onto us, you know, if we're not careful. So it actually is a little self-reflective for me as well, too. I don't think I have that same sort of tendency to poke the bear, to try to get clicks and likes and views when I speak. And I think it's important that we focus our energy into the most high moral objectives of the words that we select to have a true positive, transformative outcome in the world as activists, as you and I are. I think even though speech is free and we should be free to use it, we have to respect it. You know, we have to respect the power of it because it cuts both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my experience, the range of subjective responses to things is just always enormous. And anytime there's a plurality of people, it's just, you know, one person just took exception to this comment. And then you ask someone else that they didn't take any exception to that comment. They took exception to another comment and so on and so forth. People, you know, I think it's good to not be too sensitive. You know, I love the quote by Kwame Ture, who's actually a relative of mine. My grandmother was cousins with the great Kwame Ture. My brother had the honor of visiting Guinea to meet Kwame Ture on his deathbed. But there's one of his many great quotes is, I remember when he said something to the effect of, if a white man hates my guts, that's not my problem. That's his problem. If he hates my guts and he has the power to affect my life, now we have a problem. Racism isn't a matter of thoughts. It's a matter of power.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's good to have, you know, I come from a black nationalist, Pan-Africanist perspective and tradition to a large extent. That's a lot of my sort of formative experience, reading books like one of my favorite books, which this band, which is going to be performing on September 28th, is named after one of my favorite books, African World Revolution by John Henrik Clarke, and many other books that I could cite. But, you know, I just find it interesting that sort of the selective outrage, you know, and again, I'm not versed in Charlie Kirk, you know, and I only have so many hours in the day. I mean, I'm not going to sit around and study his work necessarily to know what he had to say comprehensively, but just in taking a look at it, taking a listen to it, like I said, I find many of his remarks offensive, inflammatory, whatever. But, you know, at the same time, we celebrate in the black community, for example, we celebrate music that denigrates our community. I'm actually more concerned about that. I'm more concerned about people who we look up to and we don't criticize, and they're promoting what Dr. Amos Wilson would call black self-annihilation. You know, it's another famous black nationalist sort of leaning book, which is a great piece of scholarship, Black on Black Violence, the psychodynamics of black self-annihilation in the service of white domination. And there's many of these artists who, you know, they're using really reprehensible language. They're denigrating our women. They're promoting violence, and they go and get a Grammy Award. And they get invited to perform at major events, even like, you know, the Democratic National Convention or whatever. And it's like, I'm more concerned about those people, actually, but even more than that, I'm concerned about these policymakers who commit acts of wanton destruction and it receives no criticism whatsoever. I harp on something that people have pretty much forgotten about. And they say, oh, you keep bringing that up, as though we're supposed to forget history when I bring up Barack Obama authorizing the annihilation of the sovereign African nation of Libya. We get more reaction about celebrity gossip stuff than an African nation being wiped out. And it's a point that really bothers me. It's a hypothetical point, but it's a point that really bothers me, which is that if Donald Trump, and I'm not defending Donald Trump, so please don't go there, because that's sort of the knee-jerk reaction nowadays if you're not part of this very limited scope of seeing things. Oh, you're a Trump supporter. Nope, I didn't support Donald Trump. You can check all my articles. You can check every episode of the Bassline. This is episode 110 of the Bassline. I've written 33 articles in the past couple years. I have not endorsed any political figure at any point in time. So let's just make that perfectly clear. But hypothetically speaking, if Donald Trump were to authorize the annihilation of Libya, it would be a huge deal. The people who can't stand Trump would be outraged by it. But because Barack Obama happened to have authorized the annihilation of Libya, it's something we don't discuss, and we'd rather forget it. And I can't stand that morality. We should be moral realists. We should condemn an atrocity regardless of the figurehead who authorized the attack. We should say we don't support this attack against sovereign people, et cetera, but we're just so very selective. It seems like the same thing in the Epstein file thing. If it's the people that I support, I don't want them to get caught. If it's the other people getting caught with Epstein, go get them, go arrest them. How about arrest all of them who are involved in that nastiness?
There's so many powerful points there. Libya actually went from being the jewel of Africa and just being such a wild success, supporting the people, to after what Obama and the national security state did to that country, there was actually open slavery markets in an African nation. So this isn't a minor point. It's extremely important about how the powers that be will use Republicans or Democrats or white people or black people to do their bidding in that time the way they need it done, right? And that's very important for us to see. I'll give you an example. People will come out at me about my support for Donald Trump, and I did support him exclusively for the medical freedom platform that he took on with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I didn't support anything else in what he was doing, but I made a really tough choice. And some people said to me, you're supporting a fascist. And I felt like, well, maybe it's like this. I have two fascist choices in front of me right now. And I have to decide which one is going to destroy me and my family less right now. And that's a hard thing to look at. That's hard to even deal with and to grapple with. But the fascism we saw out of COVID that was headed by Biden, what they did to people and to families, they took away my job. They almost destroyed my family. They almost made us homeless.
Yeah.
So I was facing a political decision of survival for my family and my kids. And to a certain extent, I had to hold my nose and make a choice in the direction I went. I want to drill in a little on what you're talking about calling out the atrocity, calling out the problem regardless of who has done it. I'm a huge Robert F. Kennedy Jr. fan. I think he's doing great work at HHS, and he's going to continue to. But when J.D. Vance was picked to be the vice president, that was before Kennedy was even on board with the Trump administration. A bunch of us said, oh, no, Palantir.
Yeah.
And that's because J.D. Vance is a protege of Peter Thiel, who founded Palantir. Palantir has grown out of total information awareness. For people who might remember that, TIA, back to John Poindexter, when it was a government agency made out of the first Bush administration that advertised they were going to be able to see all and know all in real time. Well, there was such an outcry about that agency crumbled, but it developed into the private company Palantir that Peter Thiel now is one of the main proprietaries of. There's a couple of people that started Palantir. So J.D. Vance was the first sign, and then the second sign was actually Jim O'Neill. Jim O'Neill is the number 2 at HHS. He actually was just appointed to head the CDC when Menarez was fired. Jim O'Neill is also loyal to Peter Thiel, and to Palantir. And one of the problems that we have, and everybody, left, right, Democrat, Republican, anybody needs to look at, is that there is going to be a health data grab at HHS. There's going to be. Whether it's this administration, the next one, whether the groundwork is laid now. And Bobby Kennedy has no political capital to stop it. He doesn't. And this is an unfortunate political reality. Bobby's using all of his capital to deal with what's going on with vaccines, autism crisis, chronic disease epidemic, and he's making great strides. But everybody also needs to pay attention to our data at HHS, because a lot is about to happen that, if we're not careful, major portions of the data control grid will be built during this administration. So you're right, Jeremiah. We need to be honest about all things. We need to analyze everything holistically and be honest, call balls and strikes, as opposed to just being aligned to a cult of personality, whether it's Trump or Obama or Bobby Kennedy or Peter Thiel or any of these people. We have to have the courage to look at it holistically and honestly.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, of course, the irony that I continue to point out, and I'll never forget it and I'll never understand it, is something that was highlighted in my third Substack article. If you took the Trump vaccine, you're a Trump supporter. I hate to be the one to break it to you. And I start out by saying my argument is irrefutable for the simple fact that taking a medical intervention is a much greater commitment than casting a vote, which is more or less just flipping a coin. There's no skin in the game, basically. You cast your vote, you win or you lose, you go on with your life. A permanent medical decision, an invasive medical procedure, I can't understand for the life of me how people thought they were opposing Trump by taking experimental Operation Warp Speed vaccines that came out under his administration. I just couldn't wrap my head around that whatsoever. And it's amazing because the people who were so gung-ho about the shots in the first place, I wonder what percentage of them have continued to follow the science and have taken all, what would it be now, 14 injections? I mean, you think you need repeated mRNA injections now to exist in your natural environment? And then furthermore, you would just ostracize and be angry towards someone who doesn't agree with that, someone who does not choose to be repeatedly injected. You would honestly think, we all have to just take repeated injections now, which was something, unknown in human history, to be just medicated to that absurd extent and with experimental technologies. But, I also, go ahead.
Yeah, Jeremiah, it's, and this, we've talked to, we all who have eyes to see, it's become a religion. It has nothing to do with science. It's become a religion. You still see some people out there in, the middle of the summer wearing a mask on their face. And you're just like, what exactly? It's a signal. They need to signal. They need to get the shots. As a matter of fact, just I think a few weeks ago, people were posting their Band-Aids on their arms for their COVID and flu shots that they're getting as their opposition to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It's astonishing to me that you're getting a medical intervention to make a political statement. It's actually a little shocking to me. People can do like whatever they want, but I would hope that if you're going to do a medical intervention, you're doing it because you believe it will promote health, not that it will help somebody not get elected or that it will thumb your nose at them. It is kind of a shocking world that we're in. The one good thing that's happening is, COVID shot injections are at like record lows. Almost no children are getting them, and it's a very small percentage of the adults who are getting them now as well too. So that we can be thankful for that. But one thing that's weird, I go to doctors that I trust, so it's not always just your average doctor. They're testing people for mRNA in their blood, whether vaccinated or not. And I have doctors who I know and trust who say to me, Michael, everybody has this in them now. If you got the shots, he said, I'm going to do your blood work. If you got the shots, it's going to be through the roof. If you didn't get the shots, it's going to be minimal, but it's going to be there.
Yeah.
So there's a certain impact. They always say I got to get my COVID shot to protect you for public health. Well, there's an inverse thing that seems to have happened here. The more they're spreading these shots out there, the more it seems to be getting into everybody, whether you like it or not. So it's a new norm and it's a new reality that we all have to grapple with on some level.
Yeah, that's a question that I've raised on Stop the Shots and probably here on the Bassline as well, which is what are the effects of this broad sweeping, I would certainly say reckless campaign on the species? Not just on the injected. We have altered the human species necessarily through these reckless actions led by mad scientists. You know what, folks? I have to say we're going to end this show a little bit early. Well, at least the talk segment. I have a nice song to close out the last few minutes, but I have to get running a little bit early today because I'm actually headed to the airport. I'm going to go do a show in Augusta, Georgia with Leon and the Peoples. I'm going to be playing funky reggae this weekend, tomorrow, Saturday in Augusta. So I got to get out of here just a few minutes early to get to the airport. But I just want to make one quick comment relative to what you said about the lack of popularity now, the downward slope as it pertains to the COVID injections. And to me, that sort of tells the whole tale, which is you started out with 80% supposedly, approximately, getting the initial shot, and then a bunch of people never even got the second shot to complete the series. We're already down to 70 or 60 something percent. And with each successive shot, it's going straight down to now we have 1, maybe 2% of the people who are up to date, quote unquote, who have continued following the science, just getting endless boosters. And at that point, can you really just blame the anti-vaxxers? Is it just all of our propaganda? Does it have nothing to do with the failure of the product? Does it honestly have nothing to do with the number of people injured and dead? And the fact that, hey, it doesn't even prevent COVID. And in fact, COVID is one of the side effects of the COVID injection. So, I couldn't imagine a worse proposition. Take something for a window of protection. You supposedly have a couple months of protection, then you get another booster, and in the process, expose yourself to 1,291 side effects, including COVID and including death.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine a worse proposition in the world.
Jeremiah, none of us who didn't get this shot regret it.
Nope.
Not one of them.
Nope, not at all. Not at all, in spite of the price that we paid, which is very significant. But it was great talking with you, Michael. Really looking forward to talking with you again. Let's definitely stay in touch. Always, keep me posted about everything that you're doing. And please stop in and join us on Stop the Shots from time to time. You'll always have a receptive audience there.
Thanks so much, Jeremiah. Have a great day, safe travels, and we will see each other very soon.
Absolutely, brother. Have a great day.
All right.
Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend. Can you dial in that song, Dylan or Kevin, whoever has their finger on the trigger? This is called Way with Words, guys. You could buy this at jeremiahhosea.com. Have a great weekend. I'm running to LaGuardia Airport.
Illuminates my mind like sunshines on the day. Oh, and baby, let me tell you, you're everything I need. and the secrets of the soul. Your love is the school, baby, where I am enrolled. The sweetest sanctimony